The Jeffrey Epstein case is back in the news. This happened because some new documents about the Jeffrey Epstein case appeared on the internet. These documents were available for a time before they were changed and posted again. The documents that people saw are not the collection of Jeffrey Epstein documents. However, the Jeffrey Epstein documents that were made public have started a discussion about how open and honest the government is being about the Jeffrey Epstein case. People are talking about the Jeffrey Epstein case. Whether the government is doing enough to be transparent and accountable. Earlier in the day, a member of Congress said that the Department of Justice was going to release records about Epstein. The member of Congress said that these Epstein records would be available that afternoon. When the Epstein records did not come out, journalists and people who watch the law started checking the federal databases more often to see if the Epstein records were there. People found out from news sources that there was a new set of documents that was not listed before. This new set of documents was found by using the search tools that were available to the public. Even though you could not see the dataset, on the Department of Justice website it was still possible to get to it through the way the website keeps track of things behind the scenes. The journalists were able to download the Department of Justice documents. They got tens of thousands of pages of the Department of Justice documents to look over. People who are watching this situation closely say that the information we have is a small part of the whole Epstein file collection. It still has some things that most people have not seen before. When we found this information, it made us ask some questions away. We want to know why people could look at the information. Nobody said anything about it officially. We also want to know why it took long to make the information public. The Epstein file collection is important. People are curious about it. The information in the Epstein file collection is interesting. It is making people think about what is going on. That same evening, the Department of Justice put the dataset on their website. The Department of Justice did this so people could look at the dataset. People who were looking at the documents saw that some of the document identification numbers, which are also called Bates numbers, were different. The documents themselves looked much the same, but the Bates numbers had been changed. This meant that the people who were reviewing the documents had to find the files they had already found again because the Bates numbers were different. The Department of Justice had changed the Bates numbers on the documents. People who know about the law say that giving documents numbers is not against the law. The thing is, the timing of these changes has made people look at them closely. This is because people who want the government to be open and honest think it is really important to keep records, especially when something is important to the public. Transparency advocates think that keeping track of things in a way is essential when a lot of people are interested in what is going on. There is a letter that people are talking about. It is said to be from Jeffrey Epstein. This letter was supposed to go to someone who is in jail. The government has already said that a letter like this does exist. They have never said for sure if Jeffrey Epstein actually wrote it. The letter was sent back because it could not be delivered, and then it was looked at to see if the handwriting matched Jeffrey Epstein's handwriting. So the thing is, we do not really know for sure if Jeffrey Epstein actually wrote the letter. The people who investigated this asked for the letter to be analyzed. We do not know what they found out about the letter because they have not told us. The letter and Jeffrey Epstein are still a mystery. The letter is not the thing that was looked at. There were also communications from federal prosecutors that were part of the dataset. One of these documents talks about the flight records of Epstein's plane from the 1990s. The memo says that when prosecutors looked at the Epstein case before Epstein died, they found out that some people were on the flight logs a lot often than people thought. The flight records of Epstein's aircraft showed this. The prosecutors were looking at the case of Epstein before Epstein's death. People who study the law say that just because someone has flight records, it does not mean they have done something. The papers you need to travel do not show that you know something bad is happening, or that you are taking part in it, or that you want to do it. The people who try to figure out if a crime was committed often look at these records to see how they fit into the whole story of what happened. People are really interested in these materials again. That has made lawmakers and advocacy groups ask even more for the government to make more records public. They really want to see the notes from the interviews the FBI did with people who saw things and people who lived through things. The people who think we should see these records say that what the witnesses and survivors said can help us understand things better than reading documents can. The FBI interview summaries are important because they have information that documents do not have. The supporters of making these records public think that the interviews with witnesses and survivors can give us an idea of what really happened. Some members of Congress from both parties have said that we need transparency laws that make people share communications and the work they do to investigate things. They think this should happen with some information hidden to protect the people who were hurt. Members of Congress from both parties think that if we keep the names of the people who were hurt secret but do not share what the people who saw things have to say, it is not fair. This makes people lose trust in the system. Members of Congress from both parties believe that transparency legislation is necessary to release communications and the work that investigators do. Transparency legislation, like this, can help people understand what is going on. Lawmakers said something during recent interviews. They think that what the survivors say is really important to understanding what happened with the Epstein case. Some of them warned that if they do not release the summaries of these interviews soon, the court might have to get involved or someone else will have to review the Epstein case to make sure everything is done fairly. The lawmakers are worried about the delays in the Epstein case. They want to make sure that the survivors' stories are heard. The Department of Justice has not said when they will make more Federal Bureau of Investigation interview records. The Department of Justice officials have said before that they have to think about people's privacy and follow the law. The Department of Justice has to do this. Some people do not agree with the Department of Justice. They think the law already takes care of the things that the Department of Justice is worried about. The Epstein case is still one of the looked at crime investigations in recent times. This is not just because of the things that happened, but also because we still do not have answers about who was responsible, if institutions were honest, and if the public can really trust them. The Epstein case has a lot of questions about accountability, and the Epstein case also has a lot of unresolved questions about institutional transparency, and the Epstein case has a lot of unresolved questions about public trust. This story continues to evolve. As more verified information becomes available, Sarah Brock's News will continue to provide updates based strictly on confirmed documents and official statements.